played, everyone. Well played. So, before we go any further from here, the slide up on there is how you can follow us and keep the conversation happening even after now. We have a hashtag that we're all part of a really large community on Twitter called DTK12 chat. It's design thinking in the K12 classroom chat. And we're open 24/7 on there. We gather every Wednesday night at 9 Eastern. Do the math from there. 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, 8 Central, something elsewhere. So join us there all the time. But unlike some Twitter chats where if you hashtag it, they never see it until that Saturday or that Thursday or that Tuesday. If you use that hashtag, there are people out there following it all the time. So please join in there, and anything that you see here today that you think is neat and interesting, slap that hashtag on it, or if you've got questions, put that on it and work out the tweets. The other way you can participate today is Go Soapbox. GoSoapbox.com is a free back channel / discussion board / polling tool / all kinds of other neat things. This is not a paid announcement. I just really like their product. It works really, really well in my classroom. And so we created one for today. So you can put in questions that you have for us if you're feeling shy about asking. Throw them in there, and it's a good place to see what other people in the room are thinking. There's also a little quick poll in there for us to take a litmus test of the room in terms of who we're speaking to about design thinking. And so please jump on there if you are so inclined. And yeah, now it's time for introductions. We all ready?
Ready.
All right. So today, how might we put the human back in humanities? And we are joined today. We're going to start at the end. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves because it's just much easier that way. We'll start down on the end with Ashley.
My name is Ashley Ospemeyer. I teach in Blythewood, South Carolina, and I've been teaching for about 8 years. And I just recently started doing design thinking in my classroom.
Go Cox.
Go Cox. That is right. Thank you for that. It made my morning.
I didn't even know what that means.
Oh, we'll have another little Gamecocks little shout out a little later.
I had to take a blue
variety.
fidget because he gave me an orange one. I said that's unacceptable. I can't touch it.
And I went to Clemson, so that'll be a conversation for another day.
That's why we have Ellen in between them.
Yes, and I have no idea what that even means. I'm Ellen Deutscher, and I teach in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've been teaching for 23 years, and I fell down the design thinking rabbit hole, I'd say in like 2011. I took a leave, fell upon the D school, and I went from being a normal classroom teacher, and now I teach design at a middle school in San Carlos.
My name is Amanda Kreisman. I'm a 5th-year teacher. I teach right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina in Fort Mill School District. I teach middle school English, and I've been doing design thinking for about 3 years and use it in my classroom every day, and met these wonderful people in that DTK12 chat community we spoke of earlier. So we actually have only met in person no more than 3 times. So we have an online relationship that started with this community and has developed from here.
And
we all love each other.
It's hard some nights.
It's blossomed beautifully. And that's kind of why we're here. So really engage in that community today if you're looking for kind of a good informational background on what we're doing here.
And I'm Dan Ryder. I'm an English teacher at Mount Blue campus in beautiful Farmington, Maine. And if you're wondering where that is, go to Portland, turn northwest, and drive an hour and a half. And there you are. I've been there for 17 years. And I've been adopting design thinking as my preferred pedagogical lens now for the last 2 years. And it's completely transformed my classroom. It's transformed my feelings about teaching and learning. And I'm hoping that today we get to share a little bit about what we've done is going to help some of you folks out in your areas of impact. And also, we're hoping that we can answer a lot of questions. Even though we may not have the answers, we at least want to get the questions on the table so that the premise of all of us is smarter than one of us can be in full effect, and we can help each other out to solve those problems. So what we're going to, that's the quick intro, and then we're just going to quickly share some of our experiences in our work, and we're going to go according to the slideshow because that will be easier for everybody. And we're just going to give a little brief overview of some of the projects that we've done, and then we'll get into the Q&A. So start shooting those questions out through Twitter and into the Go Soapbox if you could. And there'll also be an opportunity if you want to walk up to the mic. They're podcasting this, so if you want to get internet famous for a little bit, you'll be able to walk up to the microphone and ask some questions. And we do want this to be as interactive as possible. I also do improv, so my shtick is always like, this show is only as good as your suggestions and how much you've had to drink. So get caffeinated, and let's start with Amanda. Amanda, tell us your story.
So I started using design thinking 3 years ago. I helped to open a school, actually in Blythewood, South Carolina, and I was taken out to High Tech High and was shown around and was introduced to the world of project-based learning. And through my work with project-based learning, the more I got into it, the more I started hearing about design thinking. And the more I was kind of like, well, it sounds similar to kind of what I'm doing with PBL, but at the same time, it sounds kind of different. And so I started stumbling into this K12 chat that evolved on Wednesdays. And I really found a home of really awesome educators who were super engaged in the classroom and cared a lot about igniting a creative passion in kids that fueled empathy-centered problem solving. And that's a lot of what design thinking is. Empathy-centered problem solving. And you'll hear us talk about that term empathy a lot. So my stick in this show today is the question, how might we solve authentic problems? Because I think that that's one of the most important ways that I use design thinking in my classroom is to solve authentic problems. So my three main kind of talking points is that part of the reason that I use projects in my classroom is because they are more of a main course rather than a dessert. So a lot of people, when they hear about PBL, think that they've done PBL because they've done projects and they've done, the paper mache volcanoes and the styrofoam solar system that promptly end up in the trash can about 2 weeks after they leave the library bookshelves. And that's not what project-based learning is, and that's not what design thinking is at all. Using projects in my classroom has been a way for me to get my kids engaged in real problems that take place either in our community or in the global community at large. And in a middle school classroom, to get kids even realizing that there is a world outside of the bubble that we live in alone is powerful. So design thinking has allowed me to put my students in a position of ownership of their work, to eliminate the need for the question, why are we doing this? Or when will this ever affect me? And if you've ever been in a classroom where you've been fielded that question, it's one of those just like stab to the heart, because you know that what you're teaching is important. But it's even more important if you can get the kids to see that without having to drag them to the purpose. So design thinking has been a way for me to show kids the importance of content and curriculum through a real world application. It's made even better in part by getting my kids invested in not only their work, but also in the community that they're involved in. So design thinking is a way to solve problems for real users. And a lot of times those problems that we solve are in our community at home. And so it's been awesome for me as a teacher to be able to get my students out into the community where we live and say, this is a problem not just for someone, this is a problem for you and your neighbors and our community here. So what is it that we can do as 13 and 14-year-olds to make this problem better? And the answers are astounding. So some of the things that we've done, we worked on a project earlier this year where we were working on creating a positive school culture in my middle school. And so we talked a lot about culture in my classroom, and we talked about the idea that developing a culture is in and of itself a journey. And so we had read the Odyssey earlier in the year, and we talked about the hero's journey. And we said, well, how do these journeys shape us and how do they shape our culture? So we ended up stumbling upon Humans of New York and the work of Brandon Stanton, and realized that that's a lot about creating a culture of community in a space that is incredibly large like New York City. So we actually did a Humans of Gold Hill event at my school where my students became photographers and went out and interviewed people and interviewed staff and interviewed faculty and interviewed parents. And we put on a full-on photography event that evening and raised money for a local charity. It was right before Christmas, and we adopted an angel child. So that was just one really awesome way that my students were able to solve a real problem and bring our community and bring our school together, united around something positive and common, but at the same time, we were able to tie in all kinds of humanities content with me in my English class in terms of novels that we'd read and reflections that they wrote, and tying in a lot about the Odyssey and the idea of a journey and how people shape over time. So that's a little bit about how I've been using, I like to think that I'm using authentic problems to solve those real world questions. One of the biggest things that I'm taking away from design thinking is that I am not an expert at everything, and I am not meant to be. I think that as teachers, a lot of times we cling to that I must know more than my kids know. But I think as soon as I let go of that concept that I don't have to know the answers, that's when I really started seeing incredible work from my students. And we've done projects this year where my students had to design societies revolving around Minecraft. And please don't ask me how to use it because I still have no idea. And it's fine because I don't have to, as long as I can find kids that do, or better yet, I can teach them where to find people that know how to do what they want to do. So I think the idea of the fact that we're not the expert and we have to constantly be looking towards our students and towards our users for feedback. Design thinking is a lot about a cycle of critique and revision. And so the idea of going to students and saying, did this work for you? Is this not working for you? I think that we forget sometimes as teachers that we are in part accountable to our students and that their opinion matters about what happens in our classroom. And that when we stop thinking that those opinions are used against us and rather use them as a way to shape the climate of our classroom, we can get some really positive outcomes.
Cool. I teach AP Lit. They all know more than me. All of them. So I get that. Thanks, Amanda. Let's move on to, I think we're going to Ashley. Oh, hold on. Yes, Global Citizens. That's Ashley's.
That is me.
Ashley's portion of the program. Bring up her slide here. There she is.
Hi, everyone. So I was asked to talk about turning our students into more global citizens. And I do teach in Blythewood, South Carolina. And a lot of my students have never left Blythewood, South Carolina. To go downtown to the big public library is a trip, let alone to think about the world as a global place. But that's kind of a fun thing, exposing them to the global society. That's really exciting because they just learn a lot they've never learned before. It helps integrate our curriculum because we can tie in some of those world geography concepts about culture, also with my English standards. So as an English teacher, one of the things that we did is we took a look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and then we used that as a way, again, to go back to the authentic problem solving and these empathy-driven approaches to think about what are some rights that might, be violated in our own community. I mean, certainly people's human rights are violated all over the world, but what about right here in Blythewood? And so it allowed them to go out and conduct interviews and examine experiences, to think about research in a whole new way. It allowed me to teach about primary sources, about credibility and ethics in journalism. And so I got to teach all these different things within this, authentic problem. And it really was motivating for them. It really got them on board with that. So, you get to have some really sophisticated conversations with teenagers, delicate topics, for example. When they started looking at these human rights, some of them are kind of safe things to talk about, like everyone's right to food and water, everyone's right to a safe environment.